Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're just going to start in a few minutes as people start to roll in. Linn, how's the weather today? Where are you based?
In Stockholm, Sweden. Yeah, it's actually looking like early spring, which is kind of unusual for. Is it still January? Yes, it's January. So we are pretty happy. We're not spoiled with the sun here, and it's been sunny today.
Lovely.
Yeah.
When I last went to Stockholm, it was -10, but bright sun. So I loved it. So for anyone who's just waiting for us to begin, please, we'd love to hear where you're from. So drop us in the chat where you're from, where you are today. We love to see where everyone's based. Okay, we're going to start in just about a minute from now. We'll give everyone another minute's grace. Cool. Let's have a look at the chat. Wow, everyone's from everywhere. Sunny Pennsylvania, Canada, Glasgow. Yeah, I'm sure the weather seems to be sunny there. That's great. Please continue to let us know where everyone is based. Cool. I think I'll kick off. So thank you all for being here. My name's Electra. Before we begin, I just want to talk about some housekeeping points. As we go along today, please feel free to drop any questions that you might have in the Q&A or the chat function, which you're now using to let us know where you're based. If you're interested in getting a recording, you will receive it. You'll be able to share it afterwards. So this session is being recorded. So after this session, you'll receive an email with a recording of this session. So without further ado, let's kick off. We'll do some brief introductions. Thank you again for joining our webinar today on driving change as in-house lawyers. I'm Electra. I'm the Chief Legal Officer here at Law Insider. And I'm really excited to be hosting this webinar today because this topic underpins a lot of the work that I've done for the past decade, having been in-house teams, but also having run my own legal operations consultancy. So a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing with you today is stuff that I've lived and breathed for years now, and it really excites me, and working more effectively as an in-house lawyer is my absolute passion. So happy to be here. And I also have with me Linn. Linn, over to you to introduce yourselves.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Linn Sanneskär. I work as a legal counsel for the H&M Group. I belong to the tech legal team, and we focus mainly on tech contracts and various tech initiatives. I am super happy to be here today and discuss this very interesting topic. And I also love being on the One SaaS committee, working with you, Electra, and the team. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here, Linn. And just a few words on One SaaS before we begin, because you've played an absolutely integral role in shaping this initiative. So Linn and I are both on the One SaaS committee, and we're working together to standardize a software as a service or a cloud services agreement together. It's been a really intense and fascinating and rewarding project. We've worked together collaboratively with 63 other lawyers who were in the steering committee, as well as had input from hundreds of other lawyers who have reviewed the document and provided us with their input. And it's a project that's now wrapping up. So the final document is with the One SaaS community to review, and we'll be releasing it on the 10th of February. So anyone who's interested in that, please keep your eyes peeled, because we'll be sharing an email with more information on that. So as I said previously, prior to joining Law Insider, I was the CEO of a legal consultancy called TLB. That was a legal operations consultancy. And what we did was help in-house lawyers with their operations, trying to make them work more efficiently, be more tech-enabled, and just understand what their role is as an in-house lawyer. And I started this business in 2017, having been in-house in large organizations. So I started off my career at the European Space Agency. I then moved into large organizations, again, like Disney, EY, British American Tobacco. And I have seen the role of the in-house lawyer change quite fundamentally over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think it's important to note that the role of the in-house lawyer isn't that old. So we've only had the role of in-house exist in a formal fashion for the past almost 25 to 30 years. And prior to that, organizations didn't necessarily see the value of having an in-house lawyer. They outsourced a lot of their work to their law firm partners. And so having an in-house legal team isn't something that is well established as a profession as the private practice area is. And so a lot of this stuff is new. We're evolving at such a fast pace. And so, you're not expected to know the answer to all of this, but I find it really interesting and important to delve into the definition of what an in-house lawyer should be like, should behave like in order to deliver the value that they need. So, Linn, I just wanted to get your take on this because you're younger than me and you've worked in this kind of environment for a shorter period of time, but I think probably have had the opportunity to witness the most intense changes in our profession. So what would you say have been the changes that you've witnessed?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I remember my mentor at the time, who was a more senior colleague, he would always tell me that the role of in-house legal counsel was sort of like a guard around this castle, and the castle would be the company. And our job was basically to protect this castle, so the company, from all risks and everything evil or bad that could come to this castle. And I think that quickly changed when I started. I feel like that shift happened maybe 6-7 years ago, and suddenly we are more keen to be, or we have to strive to be more like that strategic business partner and sort of step into the castle and protect it from the inside. And to do that, I feel like we really need to know the business and understand it from the inside and out, and just become more business minded, and look at synergies and structure creative deals and really tap into that more calculated risk mitigation mindset than as before. So yeah, I think that shift has happened over the past few years.
Definitely. And I think the pandemic accelerated that change. I think cost pressures have accelerated that change. And absolutely, in fact, 87% of GCs see their role as more strategically focused than ever before. So this is a recent study that was, or a recent survey rather, that was carried out. I think what you said is you've hit the nail on the head, and that in order to do our jobs as risk mitigators, which is our fundamental role and why we're there, we also need to be business enablers, because if we're not enabling the business to go forward or to achieve its objectives, then we're not really doing our jobs. Just holding the pen and protecting the castle isn't necessarily what our business expects of us in this day and age. So I just touched upon a couple of points there around why we think the role of the in-house lawyer has changed. But Linn, I'm keen to hear your views as well. I mean, I think the pandemic really accelerated things. I think regulatory change and lots of changes in the way that we do business, the faster pace of everything has forced us to change. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think definitely regulatory complexity is something that we see more and more of, and I feel like that's something we're dreading. We're seeing more and more legislation and complex legal environments to navigate. But I think the biggest driver is probably expectations from the business. And I think maybe that's fueled by a very also competitive job market. I think it's super important these days to have the right profile. And I think companies are looking for the right profile rather than just a legal expert. And I think it's important to have that personal branding with you to show what else you can bring to the table, what else you can bring to the company, rather than only quote unquote being a legal expert. And I think some of those things is being business minded and being able to drive growth, and creating those synergies and becoming that trusted business partner that can really drive the company forward, and that also knows the company and breeds the culture and knows the objectives. So yeah, just positioning yourself into that strategic leader, I think is something that companies are looking for, and I think that's also driving that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that it's got anything to do with how lawyers also expect their roles to be, particularly as we see newer generations come up and go into senior roles where, you know, younger generations might be motivated by more than just the role or the title. They're much more motivated by things like purpose and feeling like they're really adding value. Do you think that perception and that approach to work life has contributed to this?
Yeah, definitely. I think the younger generation are definitely hungry for that purpose and value-driven work. And also they are super tech savvy. So they are used to technology and being quick. And they're also, I think, influenced by so many leaders and like thought leadership influencers these days that it's easier for them to access, and like they're used to accessing and being influenced by these big leaders. And I think that access is making it easier for the younger generation to absorb that information and become leaders themselves. So I think that's something that they feel is more available for them, and therefore they are like more eager to like step into that position.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm seeing that happening as well. Well, I agree with your perspectives, and I think that there are 10 things that businesses expect from their in-house teams today that weren't necessarily all expected in the past. So the first is obviously risk management. I mean, the reason you hire a lawyer is more than to just kind of review your contract so that you can continue with the business. Businesses are expecting you to be able to identify, assess, mitigate risks, enable the business to achieve its objectives without taking on undue risk or risk that they don't have the appetite for, but also to offer pragmatic solutions. So it's not just about identifying the risk, it's about being able to apply the business's risk appetite to the risk that you've just identified. It's not about your personal risk. And I think that often, particularly when I was in-house and I was more junior, I was thinking, oh, this is my training, this is how I think, and so therefore I need to apply my risk appetite to this because that's how I protect the business. Whereas nowadays, the business expects you to understand what their risk appetite is so that you can help them create solutions that's in line with that. And I think that's quite a tricky balance to achieve. The other is to be a strategic partner, which is what you raised earlier, Linn. And I think that as an in-house lawyer today, you do need to act as a trusted advisor who contributes to the organization's overall strategy and long-term goals. It's not just about advising when you're brought to the table, it's about proactively trying to understand where the business is going and to understand how the business operates, the industry, any competitive landscape that the business needs to align with, and to understand the regulatory landscape as well so that you can offer your advice. And so just on that point, I think that the in-house legal role is becoming a lot more interesting, a lot more rewarding as time goes by and as expectations increase. The other is, of course, cost efficiency. And I think this is an area where lawyers aren't necessarily or weren't necessarily used to being scrutinized so much, because legal has always been this kind of complex, difficult, scary area. So when you ask for budget to pay outside counsel to ensure that the company's not sued, or you need it to kind of mitigate a risk, often the CFO would give it to you because they weren't quite sure what you were doing. Whereas now there is a lot more transparency, or more transparency is expected, to the extent that you are scrutinized and people are looking at what you're spending and pushing you to spend less and to be more effective with your budget. So having the ability to manage your budget is also part of the in-house remit, which is fundamental. I think that goes hand in hand with operational support. So it's not just about being strategic and being able to manage your budget. It's also about being efficient with what you're given and what you have. And lawyers are being pushed more and more, and there's less and less budget being spent on lawyers. But ultimately, they need to be able to provide operational support in a really effective manner, because that's really the make or break sometimes. If you're not reviewing those contracts as quickly as you need to be, then the business will slow down. I'll just pause there, Linn, if you have any input on any of that.
Yeah, I think this cost efficiency is really interesting in terms of like AI and how that is really positioning us these days to be much quicker and more efficient, and also using standardized agreements, for example, to streamline processes. And I think that's going to drive down costs. I'm like personally convinced that like AI can do like 60 or 70% of our daily tasks these days. And I think that's something that can help us reduce costs.
Yeah, definitely. It can also help you reduce your external costs because now you have AI tools that are reviewing all your outside counsel bills and comparing them with the other line items in other outside counsel bills and telling you where there's leaks. So I think AI will be revolutionary in that. It'll also be revolutionary in the next point, which is operational support, because whereas before every single contract review needed to be done manually and processes weren't written down because you didn't need to do that, now you're going to have to, because you are going to use AI, and AI is going to help you speed up by 10x, if not more. So absolutely. Compliance and governance is obviously an area that's expected of you. Often in organizations, you see separate compliance departments and separate governance departments to the legal departments, and that's of course still the case. But in lots of organizations, these functions are kind of more amalgamated now, and you're expected to be able to drive on that front as well. You have to be commercial. You can't just be advising on the black letter of the law. You need to understand why you're advising. You need to understand why you're pushing back on a commercial point when you're reviewing a contract. You need to understand what the business value is so that you can drive it rather than just doing what the law says. You need to be proactive, innovative. You need to be pushing for the information that you need. You need to anticipate legal trends, regulatory change, how that will impact the business, coming up with plans that you're effectively communicating in an innovative way, often that aligns with the way that people want to be communicated with. And just on the AI point, you need to understand where the opportunities lie and how you're going to take advantage of them, because as much as some businesses don't fully understand this, having a really slick legal department that is maybe AI enabled is a competitive advantage. Because I don't know about you, but I've had quite a few instances where deals were killed because the contract took too long, or because we couldn't agree on whose contract to use. Stuff like that could kill deals. So taking an innovative approach to the way that you work from both a tech and a process perspective is key. Cross-functional collaboration. So no longer can legal teams just sit in silo. They need to partner with other departments in a meaningful way, finance, HR, IT, procurement, to address cross-functional issues. We need to understand how to speak each department's language, how each department is motivated and what they care about, so that we can address them in the right ways and serve as a bridge. Often we are the team that gets all the information and the eagle-eye view. So we need to be able to serve as a bridge between the teams to ensure that legal considerations are integrated across the business and often across products. Crisis management, so providing decisive and level-headed leadership during crises like disputes, regulatory investigations, reputational threats, and also being able to manage sensitive situations while safeguarding the organization's interests. And of course, finally, value creation. We need to be able to demonstrate how the team, the legal team, contributes to the bottom line. And we also need to be good at communicating our value. And I don't like the narrative of, oh, you need to be able to prove your ROI, and your reporting needs to be able to prove the ROI at all costs. But the way that you understand your value as a team, and how you then communicate that, is key to your ability to unlocking more resources, to getting an extra head count if you need it, to getting budget or commitment from the IT team to trial innovative new tools or new operations. It's key for you to be able to communicate your value. And to do that, you first need to understand what that value is, and then be able to relay it effectively. Cool. Okay, so why does this matter more than ever? I think that we're moving at a pace that we've not seen before. It is unprecedented. It is extremely exciting to see how quickly everything's moving. I think there's a lot of pressure on legal teams to deliver, to transform. We hear the word transformation quite a lot. Not everyone's quite sure what it means, but we like to use it. And there is a lot that's going to happen over the next 5 years that will, I believe, be transformative, not just for legal, but for businesses. And so legal needs to be able to anticipate these changes and be able to react quickly so that they can effectively advise and support their businesses in where they're going at scale. Linn, what's your take on this?
I think businesses are going to, or I think they already are to some extent, but they're going to even more expect speed from us. And I think that they're going to value speed over 100% correctness. And I feel like that's kind of like a scary territory for us lawyers to walk into, because we don't want to be wrong. We want to be right all the time, and law is very black and white. So we don't want to make speedy decisions. We want to really, we want disclaimers, and we want all of that stuff to make sure that that we're not wrong. But I think we need to be more comfortable with taking calculated risks, because that's what we're going to do when we're going to have to be faster and deliver faster. And I think companies are going to value speed over correctness. And so we need to be faster, and that's going back to AI. Using AI can make you be that really like speedy person that can deliver quick answers to questions and strategic decisions. And I also think we need to take that position as a strategic leader and as a business advisor and really own it. Like, I think sometimes we are a bit afraid of actually having an opinion. We are more comfortable with like presenting options, like, oh, I've looked into this and I think we can do this and this and this. But I don't see anything wrong with us actually like weighing in on decisions and like having a strong opinion about something, because we are uniquely positioned to know the business inside and out. We know the organizational structure, we know the objectives, the delivery model, the price model, the products. We know everything in the business. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of making those decisions and valuing speed also over correctness. And we can be wrong once in a while. That's fine.
Yeah, that is fine. And I think the business doesn't expect us to be 100% correct. But I think that if we look at the trajectory of a lawyer, just an aside from the whole narrative here, but I'm really interested in our whole, the psychology of this profession, because when you're raised in a law firm or in an in-house legal team, and you started your career, say, 10 years ago, you're raised to think that you are that guard. And you're raised to think that the value that you add is in the accuracy of your advice. It's in the detail. Whereas actually nowadays in an in-house environment in particular, that's not the value that you bring. That's not obviously there's value in accuracy and you need to know your stuff, but that's not the greatest value that the business wants. The business wants you to be able to move at pace with them. And so to be able to get comfortable with the risk and to be able to communicate that, look, I've looked into this, this is unprecedented. I don't necessarily have the answer. However, my educated advice is X because I understand the law, I understand the business, and I think that the most likely outcome would be this. And so I can give you a steer from my perspective. And it doesn't need to be that we always take the most risk-averse approach on the basis that, the dangers are there and that's the thing that we're worried about. And the predominant audience is a judge in a court of law that's going to judge our legal capabilities. The judge is the business and the customer, and you need to move at pace with them. So totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that trend has been around for a few years now, where people expect their lawyers to respond and react in a quick way. Mm. So I think it's not just a process shift or a technology adoption shift. I think it's a mindset shift as well, which is often the trickiest bit. Okay, so when we're thinking about all these things and how we're going to need to transform our legal team so that we're optimized so that we're in a position to really deliver on what the business expects of us in this broadened role that we now find ourselves in, it's a good exercise to start to think about where you think your legal team sits in this scale. So on the one side, you have reactive teams that are often perceived as a bottleneck. They're very manual with what they do. They don't really have any data insights. There's a lack of standardization across their processes and documents, and their templates are not ideal, which of course slows them down, particularly if they're selling stuff. And they don't have, good templates there. And the next stage is the awareness stage. And this is where lawyers will start to assess their intake processes, consider documenting some of their ways of working with regard to contract negotiation or any process that they undertake. The way that they start to review their contract templates to improve them, research tools that might help them work more effectively, more efficiently, give them more insight, help them cut costs, and they start to search for good partners that they can work with. Then you've got the proactive stage where you've done a lot of the stuff that you need to do to set the foundations. You've got automated intake process. You've empowered your business to self-serve, so they're not always asking you questions that are bogging you down. And you're designing your legal team. It's not just happening. It's not just reacting. You're designing your legal team deliberately so that it works in a way that's slick. And then finally, you've got the optimized legal team. And I think whereas before, if you were proactive, businesses were really grateful. I think now they're going to look to you to be optimized. And I think that bar is being raised, and we're seeing that quite a lot within the market. So an optimized legal team is one that's perceived as a strategic business partner that contracts with speed and is aligned with business needs, has really good relationships with other stakeholders within the organization that want to feed into the legal process. They don't just see it as a bottleneck or an evil necessity and just a necessity. They want to engage with it because they see the value. And the lawyers are data driven, they're tech enabled, they allow their business to self-serve, they're not gatekeepers, and they're set up for continuous improvement because they have a dialogue with their stakeholders and they can consistently iterate on the way they work. So great optimized legal teams aren't just doing legal work, they're also hyper focused on the way they work, and they realize that that is a massive part of their remit. That's not just to be done when they haven't got anything else to do. This is important stuff that you need to be doing. Otherwise, you will not be able to react at pace or at scale to deliver the value that your business needs. Linn, I'll pause there. What do you think of this scale?
Very interesting. I'm thinking to myself where my team is. Yeah, I think, of course, like we all want to be in the optimized square. I think something that is interesting there is tech-enabled, data-driven self-serve. I think that goes back to one of the earlier points about becoming more tech-savvy, and the younger generation coming in with those tools and being equipped with those capabilities, and just preparing for that, because just the last year we've seen like a massive shift in like how we deliver, how we work with the legal workflows and how we can optimize them. And by the end of 2025, I think we can't even imagine where these like legal tech tools will be and what they can do for us. And if we are still in the reactive phase in the end of 2025, I think it's going to be difficult to keep up with other legal teams.
Totally. And we're seeing legal teams that are doing a lot of this stuff already, and it's important to keep up because their legal team being great is a competitive advantage for them. So if you're in a contract negotiation or other kind of partnership dealing, you don't want to be that's lagging behind. I'm just going to quickly answer a question from someone. What do you mean by self-serve? What I mean by self-serve is if you have, say, for example, an NDA process, and the process at the moment is that the business comes to you every time they need an NDA and you don't give them the capability to self-serve. So you have, for example, a magic link that they can send to the other side and that's their NDA, then that's not self-serve. So self-serve is enabling your business to do things that are legal without your involvement. And that can be negotiation of simple agreements. Some lawyers might be like, oh, absolutely not. But there are ways to give people playbooks to allow them to negotiate very simple terms in an NDA or a DPA, for example, where you've given them strict guardrails of what they can and can't accept. That alleviates your legal team from mundane, repetitive workload that they could be doing instead, and in fact are probably better positioned to be doing because they're in the front line. So I hope that clarifies that point. Okay, so this looks intense, maybe, but I will just explain what the framework is. So we're going to get into some nitty-gritty here. If you're looking to optimize the way you work as an in-house legal team in 2025, this is a framework that will help you get there and to start planning where you need to get to and how you need to do it. So the first thing is to be really, really clear on where the business is going. What are your business objectives? Speak to C-suite, get in front of them, understand what they're afraid of, what they're hoping for, what their aspirations are, where their budget's going, understand what the business objectives are. And then from there, you can start to think about what your legal strategy needs to be and how your team is going to support the business to do what they need to do. And I've often spoken to teams that don't fully appreciate how connected these two things need to be. And we have lawyers that go into in-house roles, either from private practice or different organizations, and they have these amazing ideas about how to set up their function and what they think great looks like. But if that's not aligned with the business objectives, and if you're prioritizing your probably limited resources on doing things that aren't aligned with what the business wants to do, then you're wasting your time. So it's very important to understand where the business is going and how you're going to build out a strategy and a target operating model or your own framework in order to be able to deliver to the business objectives. And then from there, once you've got your high-level strategy, your mission, your vision, what legal needs to look like, you can start to think about the what. What should legal be doing to support that? So if you're a team that needs to be really hot on reviewing contracts really, really quickly, then maybe you want to prioritize that. If you're a team that needs to be able to resolve customer disputes really, really quickly, then that's what you need to be prioritizing. So figure out where the business is going, where legal needs to be in terms of its mission statement, its vision, almost treat it like a business in and of itself. And then from there, start thinking about the tasks. This third bit is quite tricky because often busy in-house legal teams don't quite know where their time is going. They know that they're really busy. They know that there's never enough time for anything, but it's really, really hard for them to understand what they're doing, especially if they've got larger teams. So what I would always recommend here is that you start to record your time. And this is going to give ex-private practice lawyers with PTSD about time recording a shiver down their spine. However, if you could just persuade your team for 2 weeks to start recording what they're doing and how long they're spending on these tasks, often it's amazing to find out that one of your quite senior lawyers is spending half their day on Slack responding to questions that are coming from marketing. So it's important to understand what teams are doing and to almost give them permission to not do that thing anymore. And before you do that, it's very hard to get that visibility. So that's just a tip on how you can start. And then from there, you want to start thinking about how legal should be operating to support the tasks and the legal mission and vision that you need to be delivering on. And so to this end, we've developed 5 pillars. The first is legal resourcing, which we'll go into these in a bit more detail. The next is legal intake, contract management, knowledge management, data and reporting, and across all of these is change management. And your ability to be a change manager is key to you being an effective in-house lawyer, because a lot of this stuff isn't set up. As I said, the in-house legal function isn't hundreds of years old, it's new, and the expectations on you are also evolving and new. And so you need to be in a position where you're constantly managing that change and understanding that what you're trying to deliver on is a change in the way that people work, the people perceive you, the way that everything is being carried out is a little bit of change. So that's really important for our roles, and I think especially now. I'll pause there. Linn, is there anything here that you think I should be adding?
I think this is a great overview and very important questions to ask yourselves. And yeah, I think one thing that I struggle with sometimes is looking at, like, when we support different functions and teams within the organization, we need to adapt our style a bit to that individual or that team. And even if we have an overall strategy, we need to sort of have like specific like strategies for different individuals and teams in different situations, and just being able to like have a framework but also be flexible in like how you work as the in-house counsel.
Yeah, totally. And I think that flexibility is of course key, because you need to remain agile. So having a framework that allows that agility is important. And again, change management comes into that too. Okay, so I'm just going to go into each of these optimization pillars so that I can explain them in a bit more detail. As I go along, please, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. And at the end of the session, I will answer as many questions as I can. And of course, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email. I will share my details afterwards so that you can reach out if you'd like to. So the first is legal resourcing. And I'd just like to give credit to Radiant Law for this image, because they developed it a while ago. But effectively, this is how you should start to think about the workload that you do in-house. So the quadrant that we see here is, on the left-hand side, you have things that are high volume, and then low volume. And then at the bottom axis is low risk complexity and high risk and complexity. So what I would always say is that anything that's high volume, low risk, you might want to consider to outsource, or if you're a large organization and you have a shared service center that you can leverage, then you may want to do that. What I'm going to add to this quadrant now, going forward, is probably AI, because there are some amazing AI contract review tools out there now that are becoming more and more sophisticated and are even within Word. So you can you can download a Word plugin and you can start to review your contracts really quickly and have a very junior member of your team who can process these contracts much more quickly. You don't need very high skill to do this, but they are still high volume. And because they're high volume, it's important that you don't become a bottleneck because you can't process them quickly enough. The next is low volume, low risk and complexity. This is an option that lots of lawyers don't really think about because it can be quite scary, but you are able to insource to your business. And what I mean by insource is you give the responsibility to another department that is not legal. For example, you might have lots of data subject access requests coming because you're a B2C platform. These data subject access requests will go to your customer support team. You can equip your customer support team with a really good playbook so that they can respond to any DSARs that they receive. Otherwise, you risk being the team that always has to deal with things like, can I have a copy of my data? Which actually you're not in the best position to deal with anyway. So think about what things within the business are better served by another team, and then equip them with what you need to equip them with so that you feel secure and you're not increasing the risk profile of your organization, and they can then do the work. By doing this, you are alleviating the volume of work that your legal team has to deal with. And then that in turn gives you time to focus on the more strategic work and the stuff that requires you to build relationships within your organization, because that takes a lot of time. So you want to be giving away things that aren't really value add. The other thing is here, so high risk and complexity, but low volume. So if you never really deal with disputes and a dispute comes in and you're like, this is fun, I'd love to get my teeth stuck in to this, but actually you need to upskill to do it. And actually you might be taking on undue levels of risk because that's not your area of expertise. You need to use a law firm for that, because a law firm is going to do it. It's going to be expensive, but they're going to do it well, and they're on the hook if they don't, and you're not going to be sinking your time into an area that's new, and you probably won't be reusing that expertise that you've built anytime soon, because these are rare occasions and they're low volume incidents. The place that you really need to be focusing on is things that are high volume and high risk and complexity. So this is the work that your legal team should really be becoming amazing at. So for example, strategic partnerships. If you're entering into an agreement with a strategic partner that's going to really reshape your organization or reshape a product that you're delivering, that your business is selling, you want to get really pally with the other side's lawyers. You want to truly understand the deal. You want the ins and outs of it. This is not something that you should be outsourcing. Things like advising the business. People say, oh, I'm inundated with questions from my business stakeholders. That's what you should be doing. It's the business stakeholders need to feel that they have a partner that understands the business, understands their objectives, their concerns, and is able to advise on them. And of course, product support. This is an area that I love, because you get into an organization and you can really learn a new product that you didn't know before. You don't know how it works. You need to speak to engineers. You need to speak to marketing, really understanding the product and being able to support when people want to build new features or want to spin off a different product is key, because that's when you can add tremendous value as a lawyer. So this is just a framework of how to start thinking about what you're doing and where to allocate the work. Okay, the next is a legal front door. So I always talk about a legal front door, and effectively, I think this is an amazing, quite simple thing to do that will allow you to have a single entry point for managing incoming legal requests from business stakeholders. So it's basically a central database or a ticketing system that allows you to log and track requests in a transparent way. You can use anything for this. You can use legal tech tools, but as a minimum viable product or as a first trial before you go out and buy anything, you could reuse stuff that you have. And I think this is something that legal teams are getting much better at, reutilizing existing tools. So we've seen teams that do this really well on Jira, Google Forms, Asana, Monday. The first stage of transformation when it comes to the way that the business instructs you is in behavior. So by getting them to fill in a form rather than pick up the phone or email you or Slack you, and Slack is, oh my God, it gives me anxiety just thinking about all the legal requests that one can get from Slack, and you'll have to, it's like a conscious stream of thought every time. But creating this discipline within your organization and allowing people to come to you through one entry point isn't just good for your sanity. It also allows you to properly prioritize things that are business critical. It also allows you to glean invaluable data about who's using you for what. So, for example, you might see that marketing keeps asking you the same question about where the privacy statement needs to go in their email. You could then look at that and say, right, I'm going to do some training so that they don't have to use me, that they don't have to ask us questions anymore. And going forward, I'm alleviating a big part of my workload by allowing them to self-serve and empowering them with the knowledge and tools that they need so they don't constantly have to come to me, which they don't like to do either. So I know that there are there are doubts from lawyers about whether this just makes them look like a ticketing box. We don't just want to be IT support. We are there to be business partners, and this isn't good for the brand. I would say that once you're able to overcome this and you're able to communicate the value of this to the business and how it's going to make you more efficient and able to deliver better for them, people do get on board. And the results of this very simple approach are transformative. Linn, have you had any experience with a legal front door?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is so, so important. And it's such an easy thing to do, to implement it, but then enforcing it is a bit harder because you have that situation with Slack and, talking to someone at the coffee machine and someone calling you, and you feel like such a bad sport when you're like, no, you have to go to this system and log your task. Like, you don't want to be that person. But I mean, it's going to help the whole team probably if you do it, if you have a team. And I think it's also good from that point that you raised, that you can create KPIs. You can keep track of how many cases do we have each year, how long time does it take for us to finish them. And then when you have the data, you can also, and going back to the point about AI, if you start using AI, you can also compare that and see how you can drive growth and efficiency within your team. Because I think that's something that legal teams, if you compare it, for example, marketing teams, they work with KPIs all the time. They need to show engagement and views and results in their marketing, for example. But within legal teams, I don't think we work so much with KPIs and even like legal design with like showing how we work and what we produce. And that's sad, because then we're not showing the business our true value and what we are actually also contributing to.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely key. And this will give you the data that will allow you to do that reporting.
Yeah.
Okay, the next is a knowledge hub. So again, lawyers spend an inordinate amount of time answering the same questions again and again and again. If you are able to allocate some time writing things down, that would be great. Again, you don't need any fancy tech for this. You can use Notion, Confluence, Google Docs, ClickUp, a Word document, a PDF, SharePoint, whatever. Just document the stuff that you keep answering again and again and again. Try to have something like a how to work with legal type document so that people know how to best engage with you. Remember that legal is usually one of the most under-resourced teams within any organization. So it's only fair that you want to create some guardrails to let people know how they can get the most out of you. And they will be grateful for it too, because people love a boundary. So if you can tell them what that is, they will thank you. So create a knowledge hub. The next is contract simplification. This is just an example of a contract that looked like this and then was redesigned to look much more user-friendly. Negotiations of contracts that are better designed will they will halve your negotiation time because they look friendlier, but they're also more balanced usually because you've taken the time to look at what's in there and looked and considered the friction that your contract's created. So it's so worth it for you to simplify your templates and create templates where you don't have them and you think that you would be in a good position if you sent it over to the other side. The other, of course, is, and this is a quick win, you should adopt standards. There is no reason for every single person to have their own NDA. We have NDAs like one NDA, one SAS soon to come, one DPA. These are standards that you can adopt. These are market standards. So when you're entering into a negotiation with the other side, you have leverage already because this is not your NDA. This is not your paper. It's not skewed in your favor. There is no fear from the other side that you have riddled the document with positions that are unsavory to them. This is a document that is a market standard, and so that gives you negotiation power. And if you're using a market standard, if you're able to adopt one, you will definitely accelerate your contract process. So if you're in a competitive industry and your speed to contract is increased, you are immediately adding value to the bottom line of your organization because you're getting to the deal quicker. And so legal standards like the ones that we're creating with the Law Insider Standards community are key and are absolutely a really quick win if you can get these adopted quickly. We've mentioned this before, but AI review tools are great. You can absolutely use AI review tools to look at your documents really quickly, flag any inconsistencies with your standard provisions, apply changes quickly, auto-negotiate. These are amazing tools, and there are lots of them, and you should do some research to figure out what works best for you. But there are lots of there, like Simple AI is an example of an AI review tool that will allow you to benchmark your contract against your preferred positions. So you're reviewing a third-party contract, but all the positions that you have in your head are documented and are picked up by an AI tool instantly. So it's quite magical that this is happening in our career. And finally, data and reporting. So on data and reporting, it's key for you to understand what your business objectives are. And so therefore, what data is valuable to the business? How are you going to position yourself and what are you going to report on to show the broader business what you're doing and also get what you need out of them? It might be more budget, it might be more resource, it might be more time, you might need to increase an SLA, you might need to invest in an external supplier. It's really important for you to understand what you need to be reporting on and not just report because you have the data. So this is probably a whole webinar in and of itself that we may look into in future, but it's key for you to be intentional with the data that you're reporting and do that in a way that's meaningful. And Revolut recently published on LinkedIn a copy of their report, and I thought it was great because you can see them really hammering in on what their ROI is, and I think we should be more comfortable showing off on all the value that we are adding as a legal team. Okay, so as I said previously, change management is key, and this is the 8-step change model from Kotter. It's quite a famous model, and this is the way that you go about creating change. I think it's a really interesting model because some of the things that you might see here, you might think, oh God, I didn't expect that to be the first thing, create urgency. But when we were delivering 1NDA, which is a document that has now been adopted by nearly 6,000 organizations. So I would say it is a change management project at scale. And I think it has fundamentally changed the way that people contract in the NDA space or in general commercial contract space. So I feel like these are the steps that we exactly followed without fully realizing that we did it. And so I think 1NDA is testament to the fact that these do work. So if you want to drive change, if you've seen anything in this presentation and thought, I would love to implement that, but I don't even know how to go about it, I think the first thing to start to think about is how you're going to create urgency. If you're going up to a CFO who's busy with loads of stuff and you say, oh, I think I've got a good idea about how to do this better, that's not going to work. You need to say why this is urgent and why this needs to happen, because that's how people react. So spend time thinking about a clear, powerful narrative that's going to capture the need for change and why that change needs to happen now. Why can we not wait? Why is this going to hurt us from a competitive advantage? And also think about how you're going to speak to that person and think about what they care about. If you're speaking to the CFO, you're talking about money. If you're speaking to the CEO, you might be talking about direction or mission or vision or something broader ideological, depending on the nature of your CEO. If you're talking to a team that you're trying to get them to help you, you might be talking about how this is going to make them more efficient. So depending on your audience, try to tailor your message and to deliver that sense of urgency based on how they will respond to it. The next is build a coalition. So think about how you're going to get people bought into this. So just using 1NDA as an example, we built a coalition from the outset. So we built a steering committee and we got people to get bought into the vision and what we're trying to do from the beginning, because you can't drive change by yourself. You have to get other people to buy into your vision and to start to get them to feel emotionally invested in what you're doing because it serves them too. So try to think about who that group is and how you're going to bring them in. And then develop a vision. It's important to have a vision and to be able to communicate that vision, which is the next stop, so the next point, really well, because people want to see what you see. And again, think about what they want to see when you're trying to communicate this. So having the ability to manage feelings and achieve goals, and also defining and clearly communicating the change and the impact of the change are key here. So whereas it might just be, instinctively thinking, oh, I know, I want change, so I'm going to go and think about what vendors to bring on, and I'm going to show my CFO that I found a really great vendor, and that's the end of it. No, that's not how you drive change. You might be able to buy a tool like that, but you won't actually drive change. So these are the preliminary steps that you need to take in order to get people to buy into what it is that you want to do. And then think about short-term wins. This is often what I see with things like CLM implementation. Like, people implement CLM, it takes too long to get a win. If you're going to do something like that, what's the first thing that you can do in the first 2 weeks? How are you going to deliver value as quickly as possible? Because that keeps people going. And often as lawyers, we're kind of trained to think that we need to get everything perfect before we roll something out. No, get comfortable with imperfection, roll it out, get feedback. That feedback might be, oh, this added some value, but not fully. This is what I suggest. That's really what you should do. Iterate on those short-term wins and keep iterating to deliver. And then once you've done that, start to consolidate, you need to keep the momentum going and have more short-term wins. Don't just think about transformation as this massive waterfall project where you need to bring a tier 1 SI in to deliver it for you. You need to start thinking about how you're going to consolidate all these quick wins to deliver transformation. And finally, anchor change. So you need to integrate the change into the culture. This comes from a lot of repetition. You may need to do many, many, many training sessions and webinars and talking to people and proselytizing them and getting them to really buy into why this needs to stay. This is not just a one-trick pony or something that we're going to do today because it's trending. This is a change that we fundamentally need to embed into our culture and our DNA. And so I think that if you look at this framework, it's a great way for you to start thinking about how you're going to drive change within your organization, particularly with regard to all the various pillars that we talked about previously and how you're going to prioritize those. So I've spoken loads. Linn, anything to add?
No, I just think step 2 is very, very important. I feel like change management is really, really hard. It's tough. And at some point you want to give up and you just don't care anymore sometimes. And it's so important to have that team people that you have built together that believe and have the same vision and wants to have a successful change management as well. So I think having the right team and finding those people is a very, very crucial initial step.
Yeah, totally. This is the hardest part of anything. So I think that if we can start to focus on this as a thing, like I think we don't really give it the importance that it deserves. Change management is absolutely key to anything that you do. And I think that as a lawyer, good negotiators usually, we're very well equipped to get really good at change management. So if you want to start today with a quick win, please go to 1NDA and have a look. This is definitely a quick win. Your sales team will definitely thank you. Go ahead and take a look at 1nda.org. It's a standard that we developed with thousands of lawyers. It's been adopted by thousands of organizations, and you can see the testimonials there and how its praises are being sung. So please go ahead and take a look. And as I said, if you've got any questions, we've got a few minutes, so please do add them into the chat and I will answer them. Okay.
Sorry, Electra, I'm going to come in here kind of as a voice of an unknown person, but we do have some Q&A in the Q&A section. So maybe I can just ask a few questions here. How would you propose recording time in order to get to the vision? Are there any specific time management tools or anything else that you might recommend?
Yeah, good question. So I've used Toggle before, which has a free version. It's a bit, some people might not like to record every single minute of their day, but if you can persuade them to use Toggle, as I said, there's a free version, so they can go ahead and do that. Or just at the end of the day, put in an Excel spreadsheet what you did and how long approximately you spent on it. It doesn't need to be 100% accurate. But yeah, that's just a couple of tips there.
Great. One that's a big question here is AI is potentially a great tool for lawyers, but is there not a risk that the tools will become the go-to for the business instead of the in-house lawyer? Are we making ourselves redundant?
Linn, I'm going to hand that to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think these tools are just buying us time. And we need to be mindful of how we use that time and position ourselves as that strategic business player and leader. And if we don't use them, as I mentioned before, I think by the end of 2025, 2026, we're going to be lagging behind. And the people that are using these AI tools and being much more optimized and doing 10 times the work that we're doing today, they're going to have time to focus on strategic questions and all of these things that most of the time we don't have time to do because we're like looking down in our papers and our daily operations. So I think the best thing about these new tools is that that enables us to focus on things that we normally don't have time to focus on, but are very, very important to the company.
Totally. And I think that the value of a lawyer isn't in reviewing a contract. The value of a lawyer is in having the human element of understanding the business, understanding the personality of the CFO or the CEO or their compliance counterpart, and to really understand how they're going to influence them and advise them and help them get to where they want to get to. So I don't think AI will get there anytime soon. And so I don't think we're making ourselves obsolete. The same way Excel spreadsheets freed accountants from doing the mundane work, so will AI free up lawyers from doing the mundane work. Excel didn't make accountants obsolete, and nor will AI, unless you're a lawyer that only wants to review contracts, in which case, danger.
Thank you. Another good one here. In your opinion, which operational function within the framework requires the most time to support? So you put up the operational framework, Electra, and is there a section that you think just takes the most time and effort to support?
I think it depends on the nature of your organization, and it depends on the culture. So lots of people say that the legal intake piece takes a long time to actually implement. It's not just getting the Google form, it's about getting people to use it in the way that you need. And so that can take 12 months for you to embed as a change. I don't think that there's one that's quicker than the other, but I think really understanding what your priorities are and focusing on where you can get a quick win is key to you driving true transformational change.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Any more questions?
There are a few more, but I also I want to be aware of our time here, and I acknowledge that we're almost right at the top of the hour. And so if there are additional questions that weren't answered, we will get those answered for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tori. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you do have any questions after this session, please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or email. And as I said, these slides, I saw someone wants the slides. Absolutely, we can share the slides, and you will also get a recording. So if you want to socialize with your team, please feel free. And thank you, Linn. Thank you so much for being here today. It was great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.